The Great Gatsby is a beautiful story written from the perspective of Nick Carraway during the early 1920s. It's a story that revolves around love, dreams, success, and eventually ends in tragedy. Nick's story mainly focuses around Jay Gatsby and how his love for Daisy Buchanan ultimately leads to his own death. However, Nick also includes insight on the other characters that he encounters and how their own pursuit of happiness plays a part in the death of Jay Gatsby. At the beginning of The Great Gatsby, we are introduced to many of the important characters: Nick, Tom, Daisy, Jordan, George, Myrtle. However, the most obscure character in Gatsby's story is Gatsby himself. Unlike other characters, we aren't able to infer much from Gatsby until the later parts of Nick's account, in which Gatsby's life story is revealed. As the book progresses and we get to hear about Gatsby's life, we begin to see actions that him and others take in their own pursuit of happiness.
What? What is your opinion of me anyhow?
My opinion?
Yes, your opinion. I don't want you to get the wrong impression from all these bizarre accusations you must be hearing.
Gatsby, whose real name was James Gatz, was born in North Dakota during the late 1800s. He was a child of two unsuccessful farm people, and just like any young person, James wanted to have a purpose. He didn't know what his purpose was, but he knew he was destined to do something. James's purpose is relatively unknown throughout most of his young adulthood. This is likely because James didn't know what it was. Since James had no purpose, he had no happiness. He was unable to pursue his happiness because he didn't know how. However, that all changed when fate brought Dan Cody to James Gatz. When James comes across the millionaire Dan Cody's yacht, he rows over to save Dan Cody and steer the yacht out of danger. After a short conversation with Dan, James joins the ship's crew, and at that point, James Gatz becomes Jay Gatsby. Gatsby then spends the next 5 years of his life sailing around America with Dan. At this point in time, Gatsby had achieved his happiness. He had found his purpose in traveling with Dan. However, after Dan Cody's suspicious death, Gatsby was back where he began. He had lost his source of happiness and had to begin pursuing it again. Shortly after Dan's death, however, the First World War began. Gatsby, still looking for a purpose, decides to enlist in the war. Then, in the process of being relocated to fight in Europe, Gatsby ends up at a party at Daisy's house. After meeting Daisy, Gatsby quickly fell in love with her. Jordan, who was friends with Daisy at that time, recounts what she saw.
Daisy was by far the most popular girl with the officers from Camp Taylor.
Hello, Jordan.
One of them was in the car with her. It was Gatsby. And the way he looked at her is the way all girls want to be looked at.
Gatsby and Daisy planned to run away together before he went off to fight in the war. However, when Daisy's parents found out, they stopped Daisy because Gatsby did not come from a rich family. After the end of the war, Gatsby was given the opportunity to attend any university in Europe for free. Hoping to find his happiness in another purpose, he attended Oxford, but after 5 months he returned back to America. This is where we begin to see Gatsby's pursuit of happiness start to twist who he is. All his decisions start to revolve around him being with Daisy, because he believes that she is the only thing that will help him achieve his happiness. At this point in Gatsby's life, Gatsby has no money and no purpose. However, when Wolfsheim gives Gatsby the opportunity to become a bootlegger, Gatsby takes it. Over time, Gatsby slowly becomes rich and eventually buys a mansion on the other side of the bay, directly opposite where Daisy lived. After moving opposite Daisy, Gatsby began hosting parties. He did this for the sole reason of hoping to see Daisy again. Although this plan never worked as Daisy never attended his parties, Gatsby was blessed with another opportunity.
He sent me an actual invitation. Seems I'm the only one. I still haven't met Mr. Gatsby.
No one's met him.
They say he's third cousin to the Kaiser and second cousin to the devil.
I'm afraid I haven't been a very good host, old sport. You see, I'm Gatsby.
When Nick moves next door to Gatsby, Gatsby realizes that he has another way to see Daisy again. He sends Nick an invitation to one of his parties and then invites Nick out for lunch the next day. We can see here that Gatsby's pursuit of happiness is twisting him to make friendships that he might not make otherwise. The only reason why Gatsby wants to get to know Nick is in order to have a chance to see Daisy again. And it works. Nick agrees to help Gatsby, and Gatsby and Daisy see each other again. During this time, we are introduced to the ways in which the other characters in the story are pursuing their own happiness. The affair Tom and Myrtle have with each other is based on their pursuit of happiness through status, class, and power. Jordan's pursuit of happiness is rooted within her success as an athlete, and she cheats during a tournament to achieve that. However, Nick and Daisy's pursuits of happiness are not shown. Nick is an example of no pursuit of happiness. He just floats through life accepting whatever is given to him, and since he is not pursuing happiness, we don't see his life become twisted by it. As for Daisy, her pursuit of happiness is revealed after she meets Gatsby again. She, similar to Tom and Myrtle, bases her happiness on wealth and the glamour of being in the upper class.
She's leaving you.
Nonsense!
I am, though!
No, she is not leaving me.
Certainly not. For a common swindler like you.
Mr. Gatsby, exactly who are you, anyhow?
In New York, Tom confronts Gatsby about Daisy, and they begin to fight each other over her. At this point, Daisy is suddenly forced to make the decision between being with Gatsby or Tom. In her pursuit of happiness, which is based entirely around her desire for wealth and glamour, she chooses Gatsby. Daisy's pursuit of happiness twists her to leave her own husband for a richer and wealthier man. Shortly after Gatsby and Tom's fight for Daisy, Gatsby and Daisy drive back to East Egg, only for Daisy to accidentally run over and kill Myrtle. George, who had been rather neutral throughout the story, suddenly has his root of happiness, his wife, taken away from him. George slowly turns his loss of happiness into sadness and anger. With no happiness left in his life, George sees no point in living. Tom takes advantage of this by placing the blame of Myrtle's death on Gatsby, even though it was Daisy who had killed Myrtle. Tom does this as he wants Gatsby dead and Daisy back with him so that he can fulfill his source of happiness, his status. George listens to Tom. He goes to Gatsby's mansion, kills Gatsby, and then himself. Although Gatsby's life ends when he is murdered by George Wilson, Nick decides to continue writing about the events after. At Gatsby's funeral, we see that all the friendships that Gatsby had made in his life were either broken or were fake. Just like Gatsby had used people in pursuit of his happiness, they also used him as a way to pursue their own happiness. When we look back to the beginning of Gatsby's life, we see that his pursuit of happiness revolved around purpose and success. However, towards the end of his life, Gatsby's pursuit of happiness becomes entirely based on whether or not he can be with Daisy. Every decision Gatsby makes is influenced by his need to be with her. He isn't content with the success he has, and even though he had achieved his purpose, he wasn't happy. Gatsby's dream to be with Daisy in order to fulfill his happiness twists him to become a legal bootlegger, to befriend people for the sole purpose of using them, and to go against Daisy's husband, Tom, in order to have Daisy love him. Jordan's pursuit of happiness came from her success in the sports world. This leads her to cheat during a tournament. In fact, her pursuit of happiness twists her so much that the happiness from winning the tournament far outweighed the guilt she felt for cheating. Tom, Myrtle, and Daisy's pursuit of happiness revolved around their class status and the materialistic goods that came with it. This is what twists Myrtle and Tom to have an affair with each other, and is the core reason why Daisy loved both Tom and Gatsby. George's pursuit of happiness was based around being loved by his wife, no matter how poor he was. Gatsby's murder and George's suicide was a result of the lack of happiness in George's life. While each individual person in Gatsby's life is different, they all have the same underlying problem. None of them are happy. In fact, they only deeply care about one thing: themselves. Everyone wanted to fulfill their own self-gratification, but they had no regard for others in the process of doing so. One could say that this is the culture of the early 1900s, or that this story was a rare occurrence, but we know that deep down we're all the same. We all want to pursue one thing: happiness.